Hey, good afternoon. It's me, Dr. G, and welcome back to another episode of To Your Health with Dr. G. Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. You know what? We're going to be breaking it down. Today's show, that vaping show, the remix. You're checking us out here live. We're at Intellectual Radio Studios. You're checking us out live on Facebook as well. My name is Dr. Mark Gomez. I'm a board-certified internal medicine physician. I'm also a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Yes, I love that. But we're here today to break it down for you. Again, check me out on my website, www.drmarkgomez.com. We are here today to talk about something very serious. We can no longer deny the fact that the vaping epidemic has wreaked havoc on U.S. public health. It is undeniable that youth are vaping at alarming rates. And also a fact, it is also undeniable that people are being hospitalized and people are dying. Nearly every state except for Alaska has been touched by the vaping epidemic as far as hospitalizations and or death. We have to talk about this. About 7-8 months ago, we did a vaping show. So much has changed since that time. I got my expert panelists here today. Dr. Steve Kovar, Dr. Aaron Weiner, they're going to help me break it down. But we have to be serious. We have to talk about this. Again, this show is all about building trust and delivering truth. And again, it's facts. And so we're gonna lay it out today for you. You know, we are just 3 certified experts at what we do. It's like our credentials. We are 3 certified clinicians that care about people. We care about our communities. We care about our patients. We want you to live healthy. We want you to just enjoy your family and your loved ones. We want you to have your higher purpose in life. Again, your health is your foundation for everything that you do. But again, never lose track of that broader perspective of life. There are some pressing issues that are affecting our country right now as far as health, the public health. And today's issue, the topic of vaping, it is no different. It is unheralded right now, the crisis that we're in. It is skyrocketing, and we're going to break it down for you. Now listen, today's show, we're going to be breaking it more so from what's been happening lately with the hospitalizations and deaths, but we're also going to focus on the youth vaping epidemic. We're not going to talk too much about older individuals trying to stop smoking traditional cigarettes. That's another conversation for another day, because those are people that are not likely going to be vaping at that older age. I mean, vaping products aren't marketed to 7-year-old people on Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be talking about the facts of vaping again, that Vaping Show, the remix. Again, welcome back. My name is Dr. Mark Gomez. So here we go today. Before we meet my panel, you know I always hit you with a quick disclaimer. The content of To Your Health with Dr. G is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and that the content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, and or treatment. Further details can be found at www.toyourhealthwithdrg.com/disclaimer. So welcome back, guys. So the most important thing that I want you guys to get out of the show today, I want you to share the show. The message that we're going to say is going to be so important. We have to spread awareness. Again, there's too much misleading information out there. Get your information from the people that are credentialed and certified in what they do. You know, I'm not saying like I'm a dictator or anything like that. It's Dr. Gomez's way, Dr. G's way, or the highway. But we want you to have the best health, the best life possible. And again, we have to confront these challenges, these public health crises, head on. Otherwise, we're not moving the needle. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, so we have to talk about this. So we're going to have some real talk today, and I'm super excited to introduce my panel. These 2 gentlemen are rock stars in what they do. They really are. And I like them a lot, so I brought them back to my show. But these 2 gentlemen were on my show when we did my first vaping show back in March. And again, you can check it out on my website, www.drmarkgomez.com, to hear the replay. You can check it out on all your podcasting apps as well. But I had to get these guys in studio because there's so much has changed. So I want to introduce you guys my panel, and then we're going to get right into it. So my first guest, dear friend of mine. I've known him for a long time. Him and his wife are just amazing friends to my wife and myself as well too, but I've known him for a long time. He's an outstanding clinician, outstanding pediatrician. He just is an expert on what he does. He's on the circuit talking about this topic right now with vaping. I want to introduce my good friend, Dr. Stephen Kovar. He's a board-certified pediatrician at Kids First Pediatrics Ltd. Check him out, www.kidsfirstdocs.com. Dr. Kovar, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Hey, please tell us a little bit about your background. Again, I want to establish our credentials for this important thing. Where did you do your medical school? Where did you do your residency training? And give us a few opening thoughts about this topic today?
All right, well, I did my medical school at University of Illinois, Chicago College of Medicine, and I did my residency at Hope Children's Hospital on the South Side, Advocate right now. It's Advocate Hope Children's Hospital. And yes, I'm a pediatrician, so most of pediatrics is about prevention, and that's the majority of my life is preventing kids from having problems later on, so that, no offense, but adult doctors kind of go out of business because everyone's been living a healthy lifestyle. That's what I'd love. And this is where it's a huge topic, because unfortunately we're seeing this in kids, and when we have kids and we take the teenagers, we set them aside and we have the parents out of the room, we always ask about vaping, and every single time you always have this idea of like, who's the kid that's vaping? And the answer is, assume everyone is, because at some point they probably have tried it at least.
Wow, well, I cannot wait to get into this even more in detail with you, just going to tell them the truth. My next guest, he and I have done so much work together, collaborating on not only this topic, but other topics on Tear Up with Dr. G. Also did some house calls with Dr. G, just really a good friend of mine. Got to meet him a couple years ago through Edward Hospital, and just really talking about really about just getting the message out there to people. So I want to introduce my good friend again, Dr. Aaron Weiner. I want to read his credentials because his credentials run deep. Dr. Aaron Weiner, board-certified psychologist and director of addiction services at Linden Oaks Behavioral Health. Check him out, www.eehealth.org. Dr. Weiner, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here in person this time.
Hey, you bet. I am so glad to have you here. Yes, last time you were on the phone, but we still had a great show. We're having a great show today. Tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you do your training? And a few words about what this topic means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my doctorate from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Did my training years in the VA hospitals, actually up right around here in Hines, Illinois, and then actually over in the VA in Ann Arbor. Since that time, though, I've been at Linden Oaks Behavioral Health now for 3 years. I direct the addiction service line there, and something that I've really come to identify strongly with is that addiction is a very interesting condition where people are selling the disease. And across a number of different ways, no one's selling trauma, no one's selling depression, no one's selling anxiety. People are selling these things. People are selling alcohol, people are selling marijuana, and that creates a very interesting intersection between profits and industry and facts and research. And I've really tried to be a champion for truth, which of course leads me back to your show, which is all about that.
Hey, this is awesome. I cannot wait to get into more detail with you. So there you go. You met the crew. Crew is fierce as usual. Hey, so listen, how the show works. Those of you that are new to us, what I do, obviously you just met the crew. What I do on the show each week, we have a clinical question. We break it down for you and make sure that, again, we have a great opportunity for you to spread the message, but again, to get the right information from the right sources, and that's what we're here for on Your Health with Dr. G. So the clinical question, the chief complaint of the hour, of course. The chief complaint, of course, is when somebody comes into your office with a particular ailment or concern. And the chief complaint, aka the question of the hour today, is, with the number of vaping-related illness cases and deaths continuing to skyrocket, what actions should be taken to save lives? And I'm asking myself that question every day as I interact with my patients. My patients are so much more so on the older side, so I may not be seeing as much vaping cases, but I still do have patients that vape, and I still have younger patients. I started 18 in my practice, so yes, I have patients, and I can counsel them at that point, and by the time I see them already at 18, they've already started. And so there's so much more that we got to do. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So I want to ask Dr. Kovar this question. So here we go. Let's just get right into it. Who are we blaming? Who gets the blame for the vaping epidemic we have in this country?
Oh, well, that's a pretty deep question, and the easy answer is everybody. Obviously, the people that are making the products, they're the ones to blame because they're putting out the advertisements. They're promoting the safety of their e-cigarettes to kids, and they're getting younger and younger and younger. So as they go down in the age scale, they're making flavors to make it appealing to the younger kids and getting kids hooked early, because it's like a lot of branding. No matter what the brand, the earlier you get someone, and the earlier, there are people that are certain colas, they like this certain cola versus a different one because their parents liked it, and once you get that brand set in, you're stuck and it's hard to get out. And so they're targeting younger and younger and younger kids, and the younger you get the kid, as the kid's mind's developing and their brain's developing, you can hook, you get them young, you get them for life.
It's almost like as you expose somebody to something such at an earlier and earlier age,
right,
it becomes not only the norm, but it becomes accepted behavior. And that's a dangerous pathway to travel down. Dr. Weiner, who gets the blame on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little more targeted with that, although I appreciate the broad answer too. Honestly, I think it's the people who sell it. And the reason being, Dr. Kovar alluded to this, 90% of all addictions, if you're going to have a problem with an addiction, you're going to start developing it before the age of 20. And so if you look at marketing for all of these different, any addictive product, they're going at the demo. They can't come out and say it. They can't come out and say, we are targeting young people. But when you look at the talk versus the walk are these flavors. The walk is at the congressional hearing that Jewel had, where 9th graders testified and said they came to our classroom and said it was perfectly safe. When the paper trail from that testimony found $200,000 spent on social media influencers, and you're not on Snapchat, you're not on Instagram to reach the 45-year-old chain smokers. You know what I mean? Like, that's not where you go. So I think that when you look at what started the snowball, the finger definitely points in one direction. I think now there's a lot more to it, but I think that's where it started.
I think for me, I would say I agree with you both wholeheartedly that the sellers have to share the blame. I also say, because we're clinicians, we're hard on ourselves, we want to do the best. I think we as clinicians, I wouldn't say we share some of the blame, but I don't think we've done enough. And I think that we need to do more. And so today's topic, and people out there spreading this message, is certainly a way to do it. But I think we as clinicians have to come together to attack this head on. It's hard to say, like, hey, it's like almost like a David versus Goliath. Goliath is of course the tobacco industry and Jewel. And how can we as clinicians, physicians and addictionologists, how can we just persevere? How can we succeed? Because we're so far behind. And I think as a clinician, I was behind the 8 ball. People have already been vaping. What does the modern vape go back to? What year is that? Do you know?
It was invented in 2003, but in 2006 is when it first came over.
Okay, so me as a clinician, I didn't hear about vaping until probably about a few years ago. And so I'm already behind the 8 ball, let's say it was 2016 or 2015. And so then I had no training, of course, because I graduated medical school in 2004. But although I do try to do my CMEs every year, there's no doubt about that. Got to stay up to date. But no, we are behind. And so you have generations of doctors and clinicians, addictionologists that never saw this coming. And now we're all playing like the catch-up game, and I feel like we're losing that battle because the statistics online. Dr. Kovar, do you have any kind of statistics that we see on the vaping epidemic, certainly a youth vaping epidemic?
Definitely. Well, when you look at the trends that we're seeing, it's actually a little disturbing, and by a little I mean a lot. If you look at, they looked at 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders, and they asked them, have you ever tried vaping? And it was, I believe, 25% of 12th graders, and it was down like about 10% of 8th graders, 20% of 10th graders, and 28% of high school or seniors. If you ask them, have you vaped at all in the past year, the number was 40% of 12th graders, 35% of 10th graders, and 20% of 8th graders. And then they finally said, do you vape every single day? And unfortunately, that number was 25% of 12th graders, 20% of 10th graders, and 2% of 8th graders. So if you think about that, just 8th graders, little 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds running around, 2% of them are vaping every day. There's just an article that came out today, I believe it was through the AAP or through the Journal of American Medical Association, and it was 20% of high schoolers and 11% of middle schoolers have vaped in the last month. And comparing that to the statistics last year, it's a 2 million increase. So about 5.3 million kids in high school or less are vaping or have vaped in the last month, and last year it was 3.6. So when we talk about advertising, something's going on, and it's appealing to the youth, and the more it appeals to the youth and the more it becomes normalized, and when younger kids are seeing their older siblings doing it, or their parents, or the people in different movies or whatever doing it, as you normalize something, it becomes part of the culture.
So, Dr. Weiner, what's your take on those kind of alarming statistics? I made the argument at the beginning that the cases are skyrocketing. What's your take on just the damage? How do we control this? How do we get this? We're talking about how can we save lives. We'll get to that a little more later. But what's your take on this kind of information?
Well, I think it has to do, like Dr. Kovar was saying, with normalization and culture. I think what we're starting to see is that these advertising campaigns have worked, and that's part of why a year ago we saw Altria, the people who created Marlboro, part of Big Tobacco, buy into Juul at $13 billion, because when you see growth statistics like that, if you're in the business of addiction and getting rich off the health of our youth, that's fantastic news. If you care about the health of our youth, like we do. That's the whole other side of the equation. And so I think what we've really got to start doing, and if there is any positive thing that's coming from the current epidemic of death and of illness that's going on with vaping that we're still trying to figure out, is that we are actually seeing some trends in the population start to shift where people are seeing it as more risky, which is a lot closer to accurate than the messages that they got from the industry for so long. And I'm hopeful that young people are taking note.
And then we have to just kind of do more. I mean, it's hard when you have those kind of dollars behind a big public health. I shouldn't say public health. We're trying to do public health. The big dollars behind a marketing campaign that is so darn effective. And I'm going to kind of play the thing, but I'll ask a question. But I thought you have to be 18 to buy Juuls. Well, I thought that's what it is. So what's up with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, so you can get these devices anywhere with a fake ID, an older person. I mean, that's never stopped people before. And honestly, the price of entry is not high. I don't know if you guys looked recently, but on Juul's website, they were selling the device itself on sale right now at $10. That's like you mow a lawn, and it is like so. Now, granted, Juul actually, to their slight credit, does have a stronger age verification system than most other online vendors. But you could get it from other places too. But even so, just the financial, you don't have to go too far to get one of these things.
Right. Yeah. 70. I think it was again just some statistics that just came out. About 78% of kids that have gotten their Juul actually got it from a retail store. 50% got it from a friend or a cousin or some relation. Only 2 to 3%, I think it was, got it online. But if you think about it, I mean, any kid can go get a credit card from Walmart that they pay the $4.95, have $100 on it. They could send it, they could do all stuff. And the question is, I checked it, I went on their website and it says, are you over 18? If you click yes, I mean, they're not taking a retina scan of me to see if I'm really over 18. Yes, I am, and you just send it to yourself or send it, to a friend or whatever, and you get a package in a couple days. You pay the shipping, and your parents never know, because if I'm tracking my child's debit card, I can say, what's this? But if they have a debit card from, one of those burner debit cards, I would never know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. There's more that's going to be done, and again, we just have to do more collectively. Let me ask this, because here's the other thing. But you have to be 18, don't you? But how about this? But using e-cigs and Juul and stuff is safer than traditional smoking, right?
Yeah, I think again, as it's been alluded to, that's the perception that you're just taking in water vapor and some flavor. And yes, you're getting some water vapor, you're getting some flavor, but they're not talking about the carcinogens you're talking about the small particles of the flavoring that are getting deeper into the lungs that are causing more problems. And they're not talking about just the general risk of the device, which can itself be it can blow up, it can catch on fire, it can do these things. Yeah, so it's safer in the sense that it's not.
Dr. Weiner, why don't you clarify for us out there, because I don't think people know this. And I watched one of your awesome presentations that you did recently, and definitely check out again Dr. Aaron Weiner. His stock is hot. I watched one of your presentations lately, and you mentioned that the amount of nicotine in a pod of Juul is ridiculous, equivalent of, like, I think you might have said it's equivalent of doing a pack of cigs, which is 20 cigarettes. Is that the kind of the accurate data?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's highly concentrated, and you can actually buy it from third-party vendors that sell quote-unquote Juul-compatible pods that actually have even more nicotine in them. There's been some really interesting studies that show that actually Juul's way of dispensing the nicotine as well, the nicotine salts, the nicotine goes into your blood faster even than other vaping devices, and that leads them to be more addictive. What's interesting, I want to go back to when you said, aren't they safer?
Aren't they safer?
What's interesting is that you'll hear that, right? Because you pair the word safe, and people think less harm. But really, that's what the word we should be using is less harmful, because they are still harmful. There are still carcinogens. Are there fewer? It looks like from the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, the answer is yes, there are fewer toxins, but there's still poison. Just because fewer doesn't mean none.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. So there's no doubt, again, we're trying to catch up a lot to this epidemic, and we have to try to close the gap, and because this speeding train is out of control, we've got to do more from a research standpoint. I know, certainly municipalities, state governments, the federal government has essentially created regulation. Some states have been leading the charge. Some municipalities, like in San Francisco, have been leading the charge to say, you know what, hey, we recognize that this is being so much of a youth issue that we have to curtail this right now. We're going to stop the sale of flavored e-cigs or do an entire ban. You know, where are we at with this kind of legislation? Do we know where we're at? You know, and secondly, is this going to be effective at all? Because if there's still going to be black market ways to get something, because there always is a way to divert things to the black market, you know, are we going to really make a dent into this process with some regulation right now?
You know, I can kick this one up. So I mean, a few cheers to that question. So in terms of what's going on in Springfield, there is a bill that's being, I think it's currently in committee. I think for a lot of people, it's a pretty easy sell. The issue, though, and where you get pushback, is that your vape shops are saying you're putting us out of business, right? You're doing this. We're viewing ourselves as harm reduction. We're viewing ourselves as providing a good thing. And if you take away our flavors, if you take, you're literally putting us out of business. So there's a lot of pushback on that. In terms of the impact, I think it would have one if we say ban flavors, which is what 85% of kids say that they're attracted to. There was just another study that came out that said that fruit flavors and then mint are the top two for kids. I think it would be effective. I view it kind of like looking at like putting locking your door at night. Will it keep you safe from a professional criminal? Absolutely not. Will it keep you safe from someone drunk running around the neighborhood looking to get into someone's house? Yeah, because your door is locked. And so there are some people who are still going to get it no matter what, but there are some people, rule followers, if you will, who when they hear that it's illegal, they shouldn't be buying it, are going to turn the other way. Okay,
gotcha. So let me ask this question. I'm going to ask this question to Dr. Kovar. You know, we're talking about that again, this issue is skyrocketing. The reality is right now it's dominating the headlines are the hospitalizations and the deaths. I think CDC, as of last week, there's almost nearly 2,000 hospitalizations with vaping-related lung injury and nearly 40 deaths reported nationwide. And again, every state except for Alaska has registered at least one of those, one or the other harm that's happened. So, you know, we can probably just safely conclude that the number's only going to go higher.
Right.
And it got to the point that the director of the Illinois Public Health Department came in and said the best way to not be a statistic is to don't do it in the first place. And it didn't matter if somebody was doing nicotine vaping, THC vaping, or both. What's your take on that kind of stuff?
Well, I think, again, the biggest thing we got to do is it's all about education. It's getting and educating kids when they're young so that they don't start. Because once you start, it's a snowball effect. If you stop the snowball at the top of the mountain, it's a lot easier to stop it so it doesn't turn into a gigantic snowball that takes out a whole village, by the time it gets to the bottom. So that's the thing that we as clinicians have to do, but that's the thing where we have to have more public health and public service announcements about that, but also changing the culture so that it doesn't become accepted or normalized. And if we can stop kids from starting it early, we can stop some of these deaths, because the majority of deaths aren't happening to 50, 60, 70-year-olds. They're happening to I think 20-year-olds, 18 to 25 are the majority of the people that are having the deaths or the lung injuries. It's that, and it's getting younger and younger and younger, and they're having more serious injuries because of it. So the quicker we can stop it, then we can save lives that way, and we can have people stop becoming statistics.
Dr. Weiner, what's your take on how we can start saving lives? Because again, this is really where we're trying to move the needle as clinicians. We're seeing a public health threat that's only going to grow. There's no signs of it going the other way. Yeah. And so we want to get in front of this thing. What else do we need to be doing? We have to have this kind of conversation.
Well, I think, so the approach I take to it, particularly when I speak to young people, is that we're always going for those kind of like your swing voters, right? Your people in the middle, because there's the people who are never going to do it anyway. True. The people who are so far in that they're not going to listen. So it's the question of like these people who have been experimenting or could go either, how do we reach them? And what I've been really leaning on, which is the scariest part about this, is we don't know what's going on. The Mayo Clinic published an article saying that it looks like chemical burns, like mustard gas in the lungs. For a while we thought it had something to do with vitamin E. That looks like that's been maybe debunked a little bit. We've seen it in THC only. We've seen it in nicotine only cases. We don't know. And what I think is that there's a group of people who value their health who are going to hear that and going to be like, this is not worth it. and I'm gonna change my course. And I think that's where we have the most leverage right now.
Yeah, interesting. When you think about what's the leading cause of death in this country, of course, as a lifestyle choice, it's tobacco. Actually, top 3 leading causes of death is look at from a lifestyle standpoint. In this country that fuels heart disease and cancer, tobacco use, physical inactivity, and poor diet. But when we think about tobacco, it's not nicotine that leads to the death. It's all the other crap that's in a traditional cigarette. We're talking about there's a lot of crap that's in these e-cigs that we don't truthfully know the extent of the damage that it will do. And so it's like we're only fueling, we can again kind of conclude that of all these harsh chemicals that this is still going to fuel death and destruction in this country from a health standpoint. Heart disease, we don't know what the e-cig thing is going to lead to. Is it going to lead to more cancer down the road? Is it going to lead to more heart disease? I don't know.
And the other problem is that there are the shops where you can get them, which are going to have some regulations, but then the problem is that there are some that are not regulated. So there are little pop-up things that will come up, and you'll have the Juul compatible pods, and you don't know what's in them. And they've actually taken some out, and they've done experiments, and cyanide was in some of them. So because you could get the Juul pod for $16, or you can get this knockoff brand for 10. So kids who don't have a lot of money, $10 sounds good, and they don't realize that they're just inhaling a bunch of cyanide, or I think it was plant like lawn care products and stuff like that. That's in there because it's just like they used to do with cocaine. They used to put baby powder in there, cut up the cocaine, you turn 1 ounce of coke into 4 ounces, and then people are snorting and having problems. It's just going to cause more and more problems as things become, and that's the problem with regulation. Sometimes when they put the regulations on, as you said, there's always going to be people that figure out how to come around the regulations so that they can continue their product.
So Dr. Wine, let me ask you this question. We work so hard to get traditional cigarette use down in youth. We spent decades really, I remember back in the 80s growing up as a kid, smoking campaigns in the elementary school. We worked hard to get those numbers down. Those numbers did come down on teen traditional cigarette smoking. So now, we know that teen traditional cigarette smoking is still relatively low, historically low, compared to even 30 years ago with all these campaigns. But it seems like all the work that we did is now being undone and unraveled because we're seeing this just gigantic thing. So let me ask you this question. Maybe you can comment on that a little bit, but if I'm like a 15-year-old kid, we're talking about more than half of the people that are being hospitalized or dying are under the age of 24, 25. And so if I'm a 21-year-old kid and somebody lays out a Juul on the table or a pack of Marlboros, we know that the person's not going to choose Marlboros. They don't know who the Marlboro Man is, anyways. Right. What will a young person say? Will they say like, you offer them a traditional cigarette? They're going to be like, no way, Jose. I would never. Do they do that? Yeah. I mean, are we seeing that kind of understanding?
So I think what you're getting at, you're getting at two constructs that I think are critical in how we perceive where we are and also our way out. The first is perceived risk. Mm-hmm. So a common pivot in the drug industry is the less risky someone thinks your product is, the more people who are going to use it. Okay. And so all of the messaging that you're hearing around e-cigs right now are minimizing that risk, and that's on purpose, because that means that when people are faced with these choices, they're going to be more likely to use it. So that's one element. Now the other element, you mentioned the Marlboro Man, smoking used to be cool. People used to do it in movies. Everybody was doing it. It was something that was identified as like, this is who you want to be. This is what it's like to be a man. This was edgy. Now, generally, people think it's disgusting, right? And that's kind of where I'd say your average person has gone. That was a big cultural change, though, and a big shift. And so I think if we're learning from the past, what we've got to start getting towards is moving away from the marketing and the branding and the products that have made this cool for kids. And then instead start putting those messages out there, get some influencers at all different levels talking about how this is not an appealing thing, just like we did with cigarettes.
Excellent. What's your take on that, Dr. Kovar, on I like that idea of just getting more of the influencers out there to change the narrative, because we have to.
Right, and that's what I was just going to say. It's not the ways that we used to do things in the past, putting things on TV. Kids aren't watching TV, they're watching YouTube, they're watching kids open toys. They're watching kids play video games. They're watching kids watching videos of kids watching videos.
I think my kids actually watch that, by the way.
Yeah, which is great. So we have to have these influencers. We have to have the people. Again, I think back to my mom who used to smoke when she was 13, 14, because that was what the cool people did. Cary Grant. You'd see all these stars doing it, and commercials. I think even there was a cartoon. The Flintstones had cigarettes. And so if you think about it, cartoons were, there's cartoons smoking as a kid. Oh, the cartoon guys are doing it. It's, and all the different things. But now we don't have those because kids aren't doing that same type of activity. So we have to have the influence. We have to have people that they look up to really saying, hey, you know what? This is not what you want to start doing. This is not the cool thing to do. This is, don't, if you have them saying don't start, maybe a few people will listen, and then kids will start taking it from their peers saying, you know what, you're not doing it, I'm not going to do it. And, I always think about, there's a part in Harry Potter where at the end of one of the, spoiler alert, but at one of the,
it is what it is.
At the end of one of the scenes, Dumbledore says to one of the, he says, it's easy to say no to your enemies, it's a lot harder to say no to one of your friends. And that's the thing, we have to get more kids saying no, because the less people that are doing it, the less opportunities come up. And as we know with kids, a lot of times when it's opportunity, when the opportunity arises, they're going to take it because they don't think about the future. You can't tell a kid now, hey, in 30 years, you're going to have lung cancer, because 30 years, they're not thinking about it. They're thinking what's going to happen in the next 15, 20 minutes, and that's why kids take risky behaviors, because they don't have that ability, or I don't say ability, but they don't think long term. So that's where we have to really kind of get people to talk about the here and now. Here and now, you're not going to look cool. These are the things that can happen. These are, you can, so when I talk to kids, I tell them that if you're a kid that plays sports, it can affect your lungs. You might not be running as fast. Now you're suddenly getting cut from teams. Now you're not, you're getting taken off of these things that you love, and that actually starts hitting home more than you're gonna, you're gonna have cancer in 15 years. It used to say you're gonna stain your teeth. You're gonna stain your. Once they start thinking about appearance and stuff, you got to make it here and now, and that's how we get kids to stop.
I think we got to definitely, use our peers. I mean, for kids out there, this epidemic's going on. The peers that are there, we need some leading voices. Even people with celebrities and stuff need to be some leading voices to talk about these kind of things. But until that happens, it's still going to be, as my good friend Dr. Weiner always likes to say, profits over people versus people over profits. So you guys are listening here. We're here at Intellectual Radio Studios. We're talking about vaping. I want to ask this question to Dr. Weiner. So there's been some controversy. I don't know if it's controversial or not, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. But I've seen like different data or different talks about vaping being a gateway effect to other things. I read something the other day that said the vaping effect, I think it was on CNN, they might have published it, but said something to the point that a gateway effect related to e-cigarettes / vaping and vaping is not necessarily true. Do we know what the truth is? Do we know that vaping is going to lead to other behaviors, traditional cigarette smoking, anything else, or is it just more hearsay?
Yeah, well, I think so. I've got a strong opinion on this, and I'll make it clear. But I think the biggest theory driving this is about risk. Risk is not the same thing as determinism, and so there are a lot of people who vape who may not do anything else. But that doesn't mean necessarily that if you vape, that other things aren't more likely. There was just a study came out about a month ago. Might have been American Journal of Pediatrics. I can't remember exactly which, but that actually found that if a young person who vapes is 3.5 times more likely to start using THC or marijuana products if they're vaping nicotine first. And part of the reason why we see that, right, is this progression of perceived risk. Like, just to give you an example, and you hear this, the gateway drug thing with marijuana a lot too. If someone walks up to you with, a friend even a young person with a bag of heroin and is like, hey, you want to tie off and inject? You're going to be like, no. That's like a really...
No, I don't get down like that.
That's like a really... Yeah,
fair point, Dr. Kovar.
That's a super high sell, right? But instead, if someone is like walking up to you with a vape device, and you're like, oh, isn't it just water vapor and nicotine solids and like maybe some flavor? You start doing that, and now you're hanging with a group of people who does this for fun, and at some point someone brings along some THC in a pod or marijuana, and isn't it legal in January anyway, just a plant? At some point, some hallucinogens come along, or some cocaine, or some... And eventually you make your way to heroin, and 92% of people who have used heroin start with something. You don't start with marijuana, actually, and now we know that there's a link between vaping and pot. So I guess what I'm saying, you don't make it to step 5 without first taking step 1, 2, and 3.
Wow.
And so if you're not doing step 1, it doesn't go any further.
Right? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I was going to add on to that, I think the other thing is for kids, it's that kind of feeling like you're getting away with something. And so, especially with the Juul, the way it looks, it looks like a USB drive. So it's like the flash drive. So I think about my son's school, they have computers. The school district gives every kid their own computer. Some kids are taking their Juul-looking flash drive, or their flash drive-looking Juul, I should say, plugging it into their school-sanctioned computer, charging their Juul, and because it looks like it, teachers aren't noticing it's they think it's a flash drive. The kids are taking out their Juul, taking a hit, blowing the smoke into their sleeve, and then they put the Juul back in. And you're not smelling smoke, so the teachers are unaware, so they're kind of thinking, I'm getting away with something, and there is that thrill. And sometimes kids do it, and then if one kid's doing it, oh my gosh, can you believe I just vaped in class? And then same thing with the THC, because it's not this gigantic pot smell that you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm at a concert, and they're blowing it into their sleeve, so the vapor just kind of goes away, and they're now doing something during school hours that it's exciting and it's thrill-seeking, and especially the majority of the people that have been injured have been young men, which, as we know, just through statistics and all the actuary tables, young men are going to be more prone to take a risk than other groups. So now we've got these kids that have this ability, and it's an opportunity arose, and hey, if I did it, I wonder, if he did it, I wonder if I can do it. And so now 2 people are trying it. Now you have more and more, and then they're telling their friends, can you believe I was smoking in so-and-so's class? And then next thing you know, more and more people are doing it, or they're going to the bathroom, quick hit, go to class. So now they have deans and principals and teachers sitting in the bathrooms to keep kids from going, and so they're not being able to do their job because we have to monitor the kids just going to the bathroom. And then kids who just want to go to the bathroom sometimes get caught up, because if a couple kids are vaping and teacher walks in, everyone goes down. Everyone, it's the kind of guilty till proven otherwise. And yes, some kids who aren't doing anything, they get to go, but but still, it's the thrill of the chase.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback on what you said a little bit earlier, where you almost have to assume that a young person is doing this. There are a lot of parents that listen to our program every week on Tear Up with Dr. G to get some information. What can we tell the parents that are out there? Are there any telltale signs that a parent may notice in their child, in their teen, that they may be up to, I don't want to call it nefarious behavior, but up to vaping? If there's anything out there, Dr. Weiner, when you talk to parents or anything like that, or even other clinicians, are there any telltale signs that we may observe in our youth?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things that I want to highlight, and then I'm interested to hear what Dr. Kovar has to say about that too. So the first thing is, in terms of a telltale sign, the only single telltale sign you're going to get is a positive urine drug screen. You know what I mean? Like that, like for cotinine or nicotine, and you can actually buy these things online, very inexpensive. And to be honest, although that sounds kind of severe, if you have a young person, a child who you think is at risk, it can actually be helpful for them to do this, because then they have an excuse. Like if they're offered at school, they can say, I can't do that, my parent drops me once or twice a week, I don't want to get, and so that actually gives them some ammunition. But beyond that, in terms of what to look for, one of the biggest things is that if you are staying connected with your child in terms of who their friends are, what they're doing, or how they're spending their time, then you'll notice if things change. And when kids get involved in these things, oftentimes their clothing might change, their friends change. Social media is also a big one. Parents should be on their children's phones, just period. You don't get privacy on that until you're 18. You would be blown away with what's posted on these social media things of children doing things that they shouldn't be. But like if you just take the time to look and be connected, you'll start to notice money disappearing, like the things where you have to buy and use, recover if you're vaping THC, for example. There's these signs that you can look for.
Parents got to parent at the end of the day, and yes, I encourage parents. Luckily my kids are very young, and I think my wife and I we'll try to continue to shield them from whatever we can shield them from. But the reality is that kids are going to get exposed, and whether they're exposed to it in school from an educational standpoint that says, do not do this, kind of like how we did back in the 80s, do not do this. Remember those commercials that were said, this is your brain on drugs? Any question, they fried an egg back in the late 80s, early 90s. The message will get out there at some point, but we just have to do so much. Dr. Kovar, from your perspective, from a pediatrician standpoint, what are some signs, what do you tell your parents of the kids that come into your office?
Well, the big thing I always tell the parents is when I'm doing a physical exam, I kick them out. After 13, I kick parents out, and I let the kids know that I am their advocate, and what we're talking about is between them and I cannot tell the parent, unless they're going to hurt themselves or hurt someone else, I have to be a kid's advocate, but then I also have to give them the truth and talk to them about the activities they're doing. Is there a sign? No. You're not gonna. It's not. They're not wearing the big red, V for vaping, like in the big A, the scarlet letter. They're not wearing that. And the biggest thing is just talking to your kids and having a discussion with them. And for parents, it's exactly what said. You want to make sure you're knowing what they're doing. And checking their phones, because it's easy, and kids have Instagram, kids have an Insta, but they also have what's called a Finsta, which is a fake Instagram. So I have my Instagram that my parents see, and hey, yes, I'm friends with my my parents, and so they can see what I'm posting on Instagram. But then they have another login that you don't know about, and then that's where they're getting all the stuff and they're talking, and it's hard because it's easy, it's easy because they can hide things very, very well. So for me, it's talking to the kids and going over what they're doing. And I ask all the kids, I'll ask them. I remember when I was doing my training, I had an adolescent mentor who used to say, just assume everyone's drunk, high, pregnant, and depressed, and suicidal, and you'll never go wrong.
Had them
prove me wrong.
Yeah.
And as Dr. Weiner said, the tests to check for stuff are cheap, and my son is not the happiest with me because I just randomly check him, and and it could be like, hey, you were out with your friends, I'm checking you, or it could be you weren't out with your friends and I'm checking you anyway, because it keeps him on his toes. And some people are like, oh my gosh, you check your kids, and it's not that I'm not trusting him, but it's also, just like I said, keeps him honest, and he could say like, dude, my dad's checking me, and I will lose my car, I will lose my phone, I will lose everything, and we want to. I do it again not to penalize him, but also if something comes back positive, now we have a talking point, and if something comes back, why is this, and luckily, knock on wood, nothing has, but if it does, at least I can talk to him and we can start the discussion before he gets in too deep, and then next thing we know, it's a lot harder to stop that ball once it's rolled.
I know for me, I'm trying to put myself back in those teenage years, and I'm very grateful for my parents for instilling a lot of values in me and saying, sit us down, me and my twin brother, and say, you don't do this and you don't do that, and it was that clear. And I don't think my parents had to go any further than that, but you heard the message loud and clear. It's interesting that you said, Dr. Weiner, about these tests, and Dr. Kovar saying too, you can just do a quick urine test. The reality is that, and here's a statistic from 2015, published in the American Journal of Public Health, 99% of e-cigarettes sold in U.S. convenience stores, supermarkets, and similar outlets contain nicotine, so you can easily test. More than likely, your kid will have either nicotine or metabolite of nicotine in that urine, so we haven't had that much detailed conversation, so I love what you're saying right there. So what I want to do right now, I want to get into something that we do each week on the show, myths versus facts. And so when we did the myths versus facts last time on the vaping show, I was trying to stump both Dr. Weiner and Dr. Kovar. It is what it is. That's what I try to do sometimes. But again, so now I had to come with an entirely new list of myths versus facts because we're doing the vaping show, the remix. And I didn't want to repeat what we did before because the conversation has changed. The situation, the conditions on the playing field have changed in the last 6 to 8 months because people are being hospitalized with severe lung injury and they are dying. So we got to talk about this. So here we go. Myths versus facts, how it works. I say a statement. My panelist says myth or fact. They tell us why. We'll keep it kind of boom, 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 boom. And we'll go from there. We're going to get through as many of these as we can. Love it. Here we go. Dr. Kovar, you're the first one. Myth or fact. That vaping show, the remix. Here we go. With vaping, you're just inhaling water vapor.
That would be a myth.
Please explain.
So as we kind of talked about earlier, the flavorings and the THC, there's different components in there. There's other things we don't even know about. And so as things are getting aerosolized, you're not vaping water, you're vaping an aerosol.
Thank you very much. Here we go, Dr. Weiner. Myth or fact? The people trying to sell vaping are positioning the e-cigarette as safer, healthier alternatives to tobacco smoking.
Fact that they are positioning it that way. Myth that it actually, so it is, there is some fact to that, but it's again one of those things where it's varying degrees of negative.
It's a fine line between.
And you know what, I want to say this quickly. I know we're going fast, but I want to say we hear a lot like take away flavors. We're going to drive people back to
traditional cigarettes. That's what they say.
Let me tell you, if you don't want to smoke, I've got Chantix for you, Wellbutrin for you, Nicorette for you, cognitive behavioral therapy for you, hypnosis for you. There's so many things you can do other than smoke. So I just want to put that out.
There you go. Hey, that was the next myth versus facts. But it's all good though.
Right,
I'm still going to say it anyways because I want to get this.
Give it to me. I got the answer.
I'm going to get to you. Here we go. Dr. Kovar, myth or fact. Vaping is the best option for those who want to quit smoking.
I'm going to say that's a myth.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then that's the thing is there's different medicines out there, and the Chantix and Nicorette. There are other things out there. If you need to have your Nic fix, you can get them other ways and things that would be a little bit safer than, or a lot of it safer than vaping.
I agree. I tell that to a lot of my patients that are looking to get off of traditional cigarettes, that there are alternatives to vaping to get them there. We can help them along the way and have them have complete success on smoking cessation. Here we go, Dr. Weiner. Here we go. Vapes do not contain nicotine. Myth or fact? I think we dispelled that.
So some might not have it there, but for the most part, for the vast majority of them, they do that or THC.
All right, thank you very much. Here we go, Dr. Kovar. I like this one. Many states, municipalities, even the federal government have initiated or are in the process of initiating legislation to restrict sales of flavored e-cigs because of the growing concerns about spiking e-cig use among U.S. youth. Myth or fact?
That is a fact.
Please explain.
They're trying to do that, and as we talked about earlier, Dr. Weiner said down in Springfield, they're trying to get rid of some of the flavors. But as was also said, one of the main flavors that kids go for is mint.
Fair enough. Excellent. Thank you. Dr. Weiner, myth or fact? Only illicit THC products have been linked to vaping-related illness cases and deaths.
That is a myth. Actually,
please explain.
So 2 deaths in Oregon have been linked to dispensary-provided THC products, and 20% of all cases haven't involved THC at all. This is really a very broad thing. It would be misleading to say that they haven't focused on illicit ones, and most of them are in the illicit market, but there are plenty of cases that have come from legally sold products.
Excellent, thank you. Here we go, Dr. Kovar. I like this. We're going through this list. I like this list. Here we go, myth or fact. For the most part, a cigarette is a cigarette. Vape products can be widely different.
I'm going to kind of put that as more of a fact, but because cigarettes, there's a bunch of garbage in cigarettes. I mean, there's different types of cigarettes, so menthol versus non-menthol. But vapes, there's so many different things, and because different shops can have different combinations and different flavors, there's so much variation in those. It's definitely going to be more than just your traditional cigarette.
Excellent. Here we go, Dr. Weiner. I like this one. Vaping can lead to smoking, aka there is a quote gateway effect. Myth or fact?
That is a fact. One of the most supported conclusions for youth from the National Academies of Science and Engineering and Medicine was that if you're vaping, you're more likely to start smoking, and then when you smoke as a kid, you smoke more than you otherwise would because you're already addicted to the nicotine.
I was going back before the show that before we went on air, Dr. Kovar and I were talking about how people tend to minimize all the time. Going back to our days in residency, right. And you work with people that were smoking traditional cigarettes, and they say, hey, I do a pack a day, and you always multiply it by 2. Or if they did, so it was actually 2 packs a day, they just want to minimize it because they don't want to maybe feel the shame that us as clinicians would do. And same thing with like people that drink, how many drinks you have per day, and they say 1, they're double the number. So I have to say that if you ask a kid and say, how many times are you hitting the vape pen each day? First of all, I don't even know if they're counting because they do it so often. Yeah. But I figured that people probably minimize their vape use. All right, here we go. A couple more of these. Dr. Kovar, here it is. Vaping is a young person problem.
Again, kind of a yes and no. Definitely more young people are doing it. Obviously, older people can, but definitely majority of kids are going to be in their in their teens and early 20s.
Excellent. Yeah, most of my patients, I think about it because I see adults. Yes, my younger kids, I try to get them to stop vaping and talk about it. My older people, my 70-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 50, 80-year-olds, whatever, they're still smoking traditional cigarettes. So there's no doubt about that. I only think I have one patient of mine who has openly admitted to me that she vapes, and she's like 55 or so. All right, here we go. Last one, myth versus fact. Dr. Weiner, I like this one for you. This is a good one to end it with. Everyone knows about vaping.
Everyone knows about vaping. I think a lot of people know about vaping. So maybe this is myth, but people don't know actually about it. Like there's hopefully your listeners got something out of this program that they didn't already know. I know when I give presentations, people learn things because there's a lot of medical information that is not being pushed out by the industry because they don't want it. One quick thing to end with on that note.
Please.
There was a study that came out actually in a Danish medical journal that was looking at studies out of Europe and found that 95% of studies that were funded by the vaping industry found that there was less harm in vaping than studies that were not funded by the industry. So this is big tobacco all over again. So what people think they know, the strongest messages are oftentimes the ones with the dollar signs behind them, and us here, like we don't have billions of dollars behind us, so we just have to speak as loudly as we can.
Yeah, we have to speak as loudly as we can and tell the truth and tell the facts. So there you go, myth versus facts, that Vape Each Other remix. So we got about 5 minutes left, guys, and we've been having a great discussion, really talking about what's evolved, and something may evolve in the next 6 to 8 months or so that we have to get a remix show on that vaping. I know. My wife would like that one. It's like. And so, but it's true. But we have to be flexible as clinicians, as experts in what we do, because the landscape does change, and we have to be able to respond. Either we're going to respond to it in a great way, a positive way to move the needle, or we're going to just kind of fall back into a little cocoon and let this train derail itself and acknowledge what happened. So again, it can be either proactive or reactive, and we choose to be proactive, certainly talking about it. So I want you guys to bring it on home. We got about 5 minutes left again. So I'll start with Dr. Weiner. Dr. Weiner, we've been talking about this for a while today. Give us a couple of closing remarks on this topic of vaping, things for people out there to take away from the seriousness of this epidemic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what impresses upon me right now is that it is a very right now problem. Like we have the Surgeon General, the CDC talking about this every week, updating death counts. This is like epidemic plague sort of stuff. You know what I mean? And so we're really at a place where what we do has significant ramifications on the health of people. And for listeners, for viewers, what I would say is that if something resonated with you today, don't just sit on it. Don't just be like, well, that was interesting, and then go about your life, because then it does nothing. Contact your representatives, talk to children. If you have a platform to message something out, right now the train has been moving in the wrong direction because there's a lot of money behind it, as I mentioned before. And if we want to change that, if we want to flip the script, if we want to change the narrative, have the Marlboro equivalent go away, man go away, more Joe Camel, like we're seeing something on the upswing right now. If we want to blunt that or then bring it back down again, we got to speak out. So don't just listen, try to take it and run with it.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Weiner. It's been awesome having you on the show, and I cannot wait to collaborate with you again in the future with some other great topics. Dr. Kovar, bring it on home, my friend. Give us a message out there. We've stated our case, something for people to take away from today's show, to continue to have action versus regressing to inaction.
Right. I think the one thing to stress is to the young people to let them know you're being played. And if they think that they're not, then they are sorely mistaken. The company is not doing it for them. They're doing it for themselves. They're promoting things to you. They're trying to get you hooked. They're trying to get you addicted. They're making you eventually become the fool. And I think that's the one thing that kids, no one wants to be played the fool, and that's what advertising is doing. It's getting you started early, and that's the thing kids need to really realize, that if they think this isn't me, this is never going to happen to me, it's going to. You're going to be exposed to it, and it's what do you do when you get exposed to it. And also for the parents out there, it's going through scenarios with your kids and just saying, what have you been exposed to? And they don't have to name names, but just to see what they've been exposed to, because you'd be surprised the number of times, again, like I said, I'll ask a kid, do you vape or do you smoke? The answer is no. And then my next question is, has someone offered it to you? And the answer is 100% of the time, yes. I've not had one kid who said no. Wow. And now the other question I could say is, if I needed you to get a vape, would you know how to get it? And the answer is yes.
Oh,
so kids are going to know stuff, and they're going to get things one way or the other. So as parents, if we're having a dialogue with our kids and we treat them as people, and we don't come at them as never and just nothing, we have to have an open mind, at least hear their story, and then we can adjust our narrative so that they can understand why we're saying don't start it. I think that's the most important thing.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Kovar. It's been great having you on the show, and I cannot wait to collaborate with you on other topics as well, too. So my final words are this. We're talking about action. We want to move the needle, being proactive versus reactive. The reality is that vaping, this whole epidemic, we have to grab it by the horns now or never. It is a time right now to intervene. If we don't take action, then we might as well just kiss it all away. The vaping epidemic, it's like an infectious disease, or even for my older people out there, heart disease. You got to get it at its core. We have to talk about how we can make that interaction now, that initiative, and make the difference. But we have to do this together. I urge you to not let this conversation die out today. We have to keep this going on. I want you to share this show with others. Let's keep this message going on, and I cannot wait to do it again. So again, I want to thank my guest, Dr. Aaron Weiner, board-certified psychologist and director of addiction services at Linden Oaks Behavioral Health. Check him out. His stock is hot. www.eehealth.org. He and I are definitely going to be collaborating again in the future, without a doubt. My good friend, Dr. Steve Kovar, board-certified pediatrician, Kids First Pediatrics. Check him out. He's an excellent doc. He cares about his community, and he cares about kids and our youth. Check him out, www.kidsfirst.org. docs.com. You've been listening and watching live on Facebook and intellectualradio.com. This episode is written by Mark D. Gomez, MD, and Tiffany E.R. Gomez. Producer is Tiffany E.R. Gomez. Music is by the wonderful Mr. Havis. Copyright 2019 by MDG Wellness LLC. All rights reserved. Stay tuned for my next episode. Next week, we're talking sports medicine update. Remember, check me out on my website, www.drmarkgomez.com. I'll check you guys out later, and peace out.